So it's about 10:30 in the morning. So this has been sitting overnight. I had it clamped and secured or whatnot. Feels like everything's initially cured. I'll have to do some scraping and sanding to get most of that masking tape off, but that's okay. So I'm going to get this up on the bench with the other side up, which will be the top side because this is for the fin, and start putting some epoxy and wood in some of those other places. So let me get set up on the bench and I'll turn you back on. So I got thinking last night that yesterday when I was mixing the epoxy, it was a little iffy and sketchy and I was trying to figure stuff out. So I went and picked up a couple of smaller measuring cups, labeled 1A, spatula A, 1B, and cup B, and then I have a mixed cup and a mixed spatula. So hopefully that'll keep, cross-contamination at a minimum. So I'm going to try to get epoxy poured into all 4 spots, and I'll either weight them down or clamp them down. I can kind of get caught up in analysis paralysis when I start thinking about this stuff. I go in all the what ifs, then I just kind of clear my mind and go, just do it. What's the worst that can happen? Here's a little bit of the first one. Just using a dollar store paintbrush to cover all the nooks and crannies. Maybe spread some back here as well. Okay, that's all there is to it. I'm going to do that 3 more times and then clamp and weight. So that little mixing table of keeping everything separate worked really well. I get everything epoxied into place, weighted down, clamped down. So let it sit and cure for, probably a couple of 3 days anyway. And then I think I'll attempt some fiberglass cloth. So I'm just squaring up the well where the motor will drop through, because I initially cut it pretty rough dimensions. And to do it, I've just got a couple of small squares. I'm using the top line that I cut initially as the square to go off of. Then just kind of trimming away where it's not quite plumb or square. As I get closer, I'm just using one of these little rasps. I'm not getting too rammy with it, just taking nice easy little swipes. That brings it into square pretty quick. We'll keep picking away at this, and then the next thing will be to cut the 45s around the perimeter of the whole board. So I was hoping to be able to clamp or strap down a straight edge of some sort to follow as a guide, but there's just not enough room on the bottom side of the jigsaw. And my jigsaw looks like it's got guides or slides for a guide, but I don't have anything in the box with it, so I'm just going to have to freehand it. Well, it might be a little wavy here and there, but as my first boss used to say, I'm not building a piano. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, you get the gist. I'm going to finish up doing the rest, and then we'll see what's next. Okay, it took about an hour, hour and a half, and everything is, the top side is done, so it's been all shaped. I sanded out, took off all the high points, sanded up everything on the top with just 100 grit to give the epoxy coat something to bite into. I'm pretty happy with the way it's looking so far. So I'm going to flip it over. I'll bevel out the bottom corner and then bring it back on when I cut this back at an angle, so it'll sort of cut the water a little bit. So to cut this front bevel back to here, I was trying to figure out how to put a metal guide on each side, but the problem I run into is the blade hits the clamp at the back. So I think I'm just going to freehand it. On the top anyway. Here goes nothing. I think I'll try cutting a little bit on the inside of the line in case it screws up, and then I can maybe figure out a second way to do it. That didn't turn out half bad. And another hour or so of work and the bottom's all sanded and shaped. Got rid of any greblies ever on there. These holes and divots will fill in with the epoxy. I think that front's got enough of a bevel on it, because this probably won't sit in the water, you know, an inch. I hope. Ah. Going to do a little work on the bottom side. I was going to use fender washers where these 3/16 bolts, they'll go through that way, so just the head sticking out the bottom. Pretty low profile. And then I decided I didn't want to use the washers because I would, just to give it a little more integrity, I'm going to router out. I cut out these 2-inch pucks with a 1/4-inch hole in the middle. So I'm going to router out a number of places. And that'll just provide a better sandwich. And then on the top side there will be a lock nut on this side. And these will sit flush with this surface, so like I say, the only thing sticking up will be that, which is about the same as a rivet on the bottom of an aluminum. Then I'm also going to router out just a little more bottom support, again for a sandwich, for the this is the motor mount, and a larger one for the bottom of the seat, because those two places are going to probably see the most sort of force or flex. I don't know how much the little work light I'm using is going to wash out the video. Hopefully not much, but I kind of need it to see what I'm doing. Picture, I'm going to carry on getting this all done so I can stay focused, and I'll bring you back when I go to epoxy. So I mixed up a little bit of epoxy. I test fit all the pieces. Now I'm just going to do a little dabble, do ya? I also stuffed a little piece of paper towel in the center sort of drill hole, just so no epoxy would will drain down and maybe screw up the drill hole, because this stuff's quite soft. The epoxy will be hard, and I don't want the drill bit veering off when I run it through a final time. And I got a couple little divots along here, so I'm just going to fill them up, and that way they'll be flush when I go to put the fiberglass on. So probably a 24-hour leave it time, let everything set up, and then it should be ready to start putting cloth on. Just about to start the fiberglass. I took a minute and routed out a channel on each side that these half-inch pieces of plywood will be epoxied into. And the idea for that is when I make the plug to drop in here for the motor well, I'm just going to put a couple of, I don't know what you call them, butterfly handles. Just something I can turn and keep the plug down, because I think I'll flange the top of the plug so it overlaps the top a bit. Anyhow, I'm going to go around and fill in all the holes with some paper towel, and then I'll mix up the epoxy and we can commence epoxying. Well, here goes nothing. If you're an experienced fiberglasser, you're probably going to shake your head at some of the things I do, but that's okay. I guess it's time for some cloth. I gotta get focused. You sort of see what I'm doing, so I'll maybe bring you back throughout the process and see how it's going. So here's the finished top side. Got it all glassed and epoxied. It was my first foray into fiberglass, and I think it turned out pretty good. So I'm going to let this harden and cure for a few days. It's currently, I think, Friday, so I get the rest of, or some more epoxy and hardener next Tuesday. I ordered some. So we'll see you next Tuesday. Just getting ready to put the bottom layer of fiberglass on the sit-down fishing board. I've trimmed it all to where I want it, about halfway up the sides, because when I did the top side I wrapped it around to about here, so that'll give a good double layer on the bottom edges. I cut all the pleats, you know, for the where it has a bit of an angle. Got it weighted down with a couple things. So I won't video this because I sort of need to focus on what I'm doing. I did do a little bit of reading. When I did the top side, the other side, I had poured epoxy down, then laid the cloth into it, and then put more epoxy where I needed it on top, but basically sort of squeegeed it through. And after reading some of the instructions, watched a couple of videos, with this 4-ounce or 6-ounce, which this is, cloth, you pour the epoxy right on top and then, you know, work it in, but don't overwork it. So there's probably lots of videos out there on YouTube on how to do fiberglass and epoxy. This won't be one of them. Anyhow, I'm going to get at it and I'll bring you back once I've got the first layer done. Then I'm going to let it tack up and put, I guess they call it a hot coat. When the epoxy's still a little tacky, I'll put another layer of the resin on it in order to fill in sort of the little divots in the cloth. So the bottom of the board has the fiberglass on it and epoxy. Finished about, I don't know, 20 minutes ago. I'm going to let it sort of tack up and cure a little bit for, I guess, 3 or 4 hours. And then, from what I was reading, I'll put what they call a hot coat on it. Well, it's still just a wee bit tacky, and that's to fill in the weave on the cloth. I'm not going to bother putting a hot coat on the top because I think I want it a little bit textured. Might just, maybe won't be quite so slippery or whatever. But yeah, I'll smooth out the bottom a bit, and then I'll let it sit for probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 days. let it cure, then I'll commence sanding and give it a trim clad paint job. So I did a little building off camera yesterday. I didn't have the camera with me. I carved up a block 4. I've got the board sort of suspended up so my sister can park in her garage, just letting it cure all that epoxy. But I carved up the plug for the well. There'll be so this will drop in. I'm going to flange the top of it, and it has a little divot cut out. I used a hole saw and took a couple runs at it for the shaft of the trolling motor. Maybe tomorrow or the next day I'm going to wrap that in fiberglass and epoxy it. Picked up some Seco, what the heck is it? Acrylic exterior paint. Sort of looking online, and that seemed to be something that may work. Nice light blue, sky blue or whatever. And I went looking for tie downs for the front and back. I found this is out of a Toyota. Had a few of these, but I thought I had more, but this is the last one. So I'll straighten out or cut off that little tab, and it'll bolt through this washer I embedded in the epoxy through to the bottom. So that'll give me a little tie down on the back of it. And for the front, I found a little hold tab, which I'll line up so I can get the screwdriver and a screw through. And this old bracket, I think I'm going to cut it off. I'll take my cutting wheel and cut it off there. Weld this tab to it, so I'll be able to put a screw in there, one there, probably one on each side. And the idea that this will screw onto the front, so I've got a little place to either tie it down to the top of the vehicle or, you know, tie it to shore or whatever. I'll just dig out the little buzz box and get things set up and commence more building. And with this front piece all sanded and prepped, just gonna put a little weld on it. I'll let that cool. Whoops! I'll let that cool down a bit, and I'll clean it up and drill another 3 holes. That'll give me 4 places to screw it down. Plus, I think I'll epoxy the bottom, so it's good. So I marked out where I want this to be mounted. Just roughed up the epoxy a little bit. The back of this has been roughed up with I think an 80 grit, 60 maybe. Just going to drill some pilot holes, and then I'll mix up a little bit of epoxy, and I want to glue this down. I'll maybe clean up a little bit around the edges. I'm going to let that set. Then I might mask it off and spray this with some bed liner. Yeah, that ought to protect it a little bit. And I can tie a rope or lanyard or whatever to the front. Well, I'm going to prep for paint by sanding. Just got the little orbital sander with some 100 grit. Just going to knock off any high spots, anything that sort of has the possibility of cutting or catching your clothes or whatever. I got the fan set up to provide some ventilation to blow out any fiberglass dust. Got the shop vac ready and it's set on exhaust. I'll use it to blow the garage out and the board off before I start painting. We got a full pair of hooded coveralls that are disposable, safety glasses, and I'll also be wearing a respirator because this fiberglass gets pretty nasty. So I'll set the camera up in a stand and commence sanding. So it won't be an automotive finish, but that's not what I'm going for because the fish really won't care. And it is, I think, the 24th of June. So I want to get this roughed up so the paint will stick. Get the paint on it, let it cure for, I don't know, 3 to 5 days. Dry up real nice, and then bolt the stuff on and get it out in the water. So you see what I'm doing here. I'm going to flip it over, do the same to the other side. Make sure there's nothing there that'll catch or cut. And I'll bring it back when I start painting. So everything's been sanded. I washed it all down with alcohol, which is one of the things the good old World Wide Web said. My sister showed me this trick. You just put a plastic bag in your paint tray and then you just throw the bag out when you're done. So I thought I'd try it. I got a 1/4-inch nap roller from the dollar store. So we'll see how well this goes. Again, really the paint is, the main purpose is some UV protection. So I'm going to focus on getting this done, and I'll bring you back with the finished product. I got it suspended up, tied up to the garage roof again, so I can get my sister's car in the garage. I got 2 coats of paint on the top side and just finished putting one on the bottom side here. So I'm going to let that set overnight, and then I'll put one more coat on. Once that dries, let it cure a bit, and bolt all the goodies on. So while the final coat of paint is drying, I thought I would start putting some fiberglass on this plug. Mixed up a little epoxy. Well, this is kind of messy, so I'm going to just keep playing with it. I think I'll probably have to keep working it until it gets somewhat tacky, 20-30 minutes. So trying to fold the fiber cloth over and get it to stick just wasn't really working for me. So I've left it all up. I did epoxy the top. I'll do the same to the bottom probably tomorrow. I'm going to take a Dremel and a little blade, go around and just cut off the excess. And I think to finish the top and bottom is I'm just going to use some cotton, some old bed sheets, and embed it into epoxy. Because this isn't going to be well, none of the boat's really going to be a high wear area, so not overly critical. Yeah, so we'll see you tomorrow and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, it's the next day. This might have got glued down a little bit. I was going to take a Dremel or something, then I thought I'd just try a pair of tin snips. Try some scissors. That seems to be working. We'll finish trimming this out and then we'll just do a test fit, and then I want to start working on the other side and maybe put a flange on it. It took a combination of, tin snips, garden shears, razor knife, side cutters, scissors, but I trimmed off all the rough stuff and gave the edge a bit of a sand. So I'm just going to take it over and test fit it, and then I'm going to come up with an idea to put a little flange around the top. So it'll go in from the top. We're working at the bottom right now, but it should be the same. Yeah, I think it'll fit all right. Should work. Got the divot here for the motor stem. Cool. Now let me see what I got to. I think I got some thin aluminum to make a flange around the top. I have this last chunk of, I think it was some trim off one of the boats I had. It's pretty lightweight aluminum. So I think I'll cut some 1.5-inch strips. And then I'll secure them so they have about a 1/2-inch overlap all around. You know, smooth them out, shine them, get rid of any burrs on the edges. And I'll probably glue it down with JB weld, because that's a little quicker setting and it's got a little more viscosity to it, so it won't run all over the place. It'll be a little noisy while I cut this, so I'll bring you back once I get the strips cut. Okay, I got all the pieces cut and sanded and all the sharp edges roughed up. I marked out, you know, where the epoxy will go to. And I think I said before I'm going to use JB weld because it's got some sort of some consistency to it. Okay, that should create a nice flange so it'll sit level. And then so it cures nice and flat, I got a chunk of marble. I put some that food wrap or saran wrap down. That way if the epoxy sticks to it, it'll be easy enough to sand off. Chunk of 1/2-inch plate. And a couple of steel weights. Well, nothing left to do but let it dry. So, and this is the JB Quick Weld, so it sets in 6 minutes, cures in 4 to 6 hours, so that'll work. Well, that's drying. I've got a 20 horse Yamaha outboard over there I got to do a tune-up on, but I won't be videoing that. So we'll see you back here in a bit. So the plug turned out okay. Looks like all the epoxy set. I need to do a little bit of sanding, then I'm going to coat the top part. Like I say, it's not going to be seeing a lot of wear, so it's not like it needs to be bulletproof. The board's upside down right now, but that's basically how it'll drop into place. So splash it with some blue paint and it should be good to go. Put some screws in where the fin's gonna go, just as placeholders, so the paint didn't sort of hide or obscure the holes. Whoop. Just for a little added securement, I think I'll put a little silicone around the perimeter. Perfect. I'll flip it over and we'll start putting bolts in. And for the battery box, I've got a sort of a loop hook down here. Little pull strap will go through it. On this side, I'm just going to punch a hole through here. Yeah, that'll work. Put a washer on there. A lock nut. And on the bottom, all these bolts, I'm using this 100% quick seal silicone and just putting some around the base so that it, it'll somewhat seal up the bottom. front of the battery box, I've got a couple of those. I bought a bag of those snap buckles, so I'm going to cut this and just make it so I can snap the little storage crate down. Just removing the screws I had used for placeholders for this, for the paddle holder. You got the bolts through for the motor mount. They're siliconed on the bottom. And I have the seat bolts in place. I took my flapper disc and sort of took off one side so they would fit. Just putting washers on helps to spread out the force once you start working it. Now let's see how the plug fits. Perfect. So I picked this boat seat up out of Kijiji for free my favorite price. Figured I'd, you know, before I spend the money on a deluxe boat seat, I'll make sure this thing floats and works and all of that good stuff. I might have to lose the washers and shave these bolts down just a bit, because it would appear yeah, the height of that nut is getting in the way of the swivel, so I'll take a minute and remove the washer and see if that makes a difference. Yeah, that's all it took, was to take the washer out and just give it just that amount of clearance. And the paddle pops into place. So it's just about finished. Got to paint the motor well plug, but everything's mounted. Looks like it's right where it's supposed to be. Got some storage, the battery, tie downs, paddle holder. Now it's just a matter of putting it in the water and seeing how it floats. After I do have to do a little bit of electrical. That should work out, maybe even there. I kind of came up with a design for a dead man switch, so if I fall off, the motor won't keep running, and I'll get to that next. Just working on the tie down for this, for the little storage container, or a day bag or whatever. Got some of this, I don't know what you call it, nylon webbing left over from some other stuff. I just want to get a bit of a measurement. I got one of these, I bought some of these buckles. Perfect. I'll punch a couple of holes and put a couple split rivets through it. Just melt the end so it doesn't fray. Put a little washer on. Get a little thicker chisel to spread those a little farther. And I'll stick one more in just for good measure. I'll cut that off with a hacksaw in a bit. And with the other end of this, I'll string it through the other part of the buckle. Just make sure I get this through the right way. So it doesn't slip. Okay. And I'll stick a rivet through this end just so it can't slip out. Well, that should work. And last night off camera, I tried something a little different. I put the epoxy down, then I just cut up an old cotton sheet and embedded it in. Feels resilient enough. It's got kind of a textured matte finish, but I'm going to sand this up a little bit and then throw some paint on it. And but before I do that, I'm going to figure out some sort of lock-in mechanism for each side just to hold this down. And to do that, I've got a chunk of, I don't know, 5/16 thick Teflon. It was a cutting board I used for something else. But I think I'll cut some sort of widget wings out of it. I can screw it into those 2 blocks of wood that I epoxied in, and that'll just hold it nice and flush, so it doesn't bounce out when I'm zooming across the lake. I got a little bit ahead of the recording, so got the pilot's hole drilled, cut these up. Just going to open them up a little bit. Looks like 2 washers should be about the right spacing. Might have to tweak this as time goes on. Yeah, that'll work. Made up a couple of little hooks that are gonna get bolted there. Found a fairly heavy-duty, briefcase strap or laptop bag or whatever. So that'll help me carry it down to the beach. Then for a junction block, I'll drill a hole so that'll set over there. And drill 2 holes so I can connect the motor right beside me. Because, I've got a fair bit of a reach for cable getting back to the battery box. So, and I also want to put an inline fuse in the, a 30 amp fuse in the battery cable. So I'll take a minute and cut this up and drill some holes, and then bring you back and we'll install this stuff. I want to countersink the heads a little bit, not a whole bunch. I got a 1-inch spade bit, so I'll see if that does it. Perfect. So I took a few minutes off camera and soldered ends on the extension cord, as well as a 30 amp fuse should something go wrong. I was going to use these button head bolts, but then I found some, so let me show you here, some sort of flathead, or what do you call them? I forget what they're called, but they fit a lot. They're pretty much flush. So I'm going to use those. I'll put these on under the nuts, and then I'll use the wing nuts for the hooking up the motor. And this way I can take the motor with me and use it on my bigger boat. There. Black to black and red to red. The idea of a kill switch keeps coming back into my mind. So what I've come up with, so I got a couple of plug ends. I took the ground out. So on this one I'm gonna, let me just undo this. I'm gonna jumper across these two. So that would be a closed circuit, and that'll be attached to a lanyard, which, you know, clips onto my belt or my vest. And then on this side, I'm going to split the red and bring it up into here on each side. So, you know, when everything's hooked up, there's no power going through it. As soon as I plug in, that closes the circuit. And if I fall off, then this should come loose and stop the boat from floating away on me. Okay, I already stripped the wires and cut everything to length and put some flux on. Just want to get a bit of solder on the end of these wires. It just makes them stand up a whole lot better. I'd already put a little curve in this one because I want them to be able to loop around just to hold them in, seeing as this is going to be in a sort of pull situation. The sort of more integral I can make it, the better. I'm going to feed them through there and get the clamp out of the way. I'll flatten this out a bit. That's one side done. I'd looked around for a number of different types of kill switches or dead man switch that would handle 12 volts and up to 30 amps. Couldn't really find anything. Hence why I'm building it. cut this to length and put a new eyelet on the end. I'm gonna go grab some zip straps, strap this up. Be right back. There, that's just a little added security. They're not the prettiest job, but it'll suffice. I just have to cut a lanyard, tie a knot, and that should be ready to go, and then I can install this. So I got this, I don't know, it's sort of waxed or treated nylon cord, super strong. Tied a couple of knots in the end of it. I got a little, I don't know what you call these, carabiners. So I'll tie a couple knots, wrap it up with tape or put some heat shrink on it, and that'll serve as the disconnect. Going to do a quick continuity test. This little, I don't know if you can see that, but the digital 1 should go out when I touch this. And if I unplug that, there's nothing there. So that side's open and that side's closed and this side's open. Perfect. I'll feel a little safer now being out in the water in case I fall off.